Taemin pressed his webbed fingers against the observation window and stared at the planet below. Terminus 7 looked peaceful from orbit, but he knew better. Down there, 3 armies were tearing each other apart. The insect-like Vrath were consuming everything in their path. The crystal beings called Luminar were burning cities with pure energy, and the locals were dying by the thousands. He had been watching this war for 6 weeks now. Taemin was a Kalis, a species known for keeping perfect records and staying neutral in all conflicts. His amphibian-like body was tall and thin, with smooth blue skin that glistened under the station lights. His large eyes could see more colors than most species, perfect for observing details others might miss. "The humans will arrive in 3 hours," said Velthar, his mentor. The old Kalis moved slowly across the observation deck, his walking staff tapping against the metal floor. "Have you prepared your recording equipment?" "Yes, Master," Taemin replied. He gestured to the array of cameras and sensors floating near the window. "I have studied all available data on human combat behavior, though I must admit, much of it seems exaggerated." Velthar made a gurgling sound that served as Kalis laughter. "Not lies exactly," Taemin said carefully. "But perhaps the truth has grown larger with each telling. The stories say humans are unstoppable warriors, that they feel no fear, that they can fight for days without rest." He shook his head. "No species can truly be like that." "No. Then you will learn something important today," Velthar said. His voice grew serious. "I have observed humans only once in my lifetime. It was 70 years ago, during the Kelmar Rebellion. I still have nightmares about what I saw." Taemin wanted to ask more, but an alarm chimed softly. Ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel near the planet. He activated his recording systems and zoomed in on the new arrivals. The human fleet looked terrible. Their ships were old and mismatched, covered in patches and repairs. Some vessels looked like they had been assembled from parts of completely different designs. Taemin counted only 12 ships total. Below them, the Vrath had thousands of organic warships growing in orbit. The Luminar controlled 3 moon-sized battle stations. "They brought so few ships?" Taemin said in disbelief. "Humans prefer to fight on the ground," Velthar explained. "They find space combat impersonal." Over the next hour, Taemin watched the human ships descend to the planet's surface. They landed in a contested industrial zone where neither the Vrath nor the Luminar had full control. It seemed like a terrible strategic choice. They would be surrounded immediately. The communication systems crackled to life. "Galactic Council Observation Station. This is Captain Jiho of the Taeguk Regiment. We are beginning deployment. Please maintain safe distance from combat zones." Taemin activated the response channel. "Acknowledged. Captain. I am Taemin, assigned to document your operations. May I ask how many soldiers you brought?" There was a pause. Then Jiho replied, 800 combat personnel. Plus support staff. 800. Taemin felt his throat sacs deflate in shock. The Vrath had deployed over 40,000 warriors to this sector alone. The Luminar had at least 15,000 soldiers. 800 humans were supposed to make a difference? Other observers had gathered in the station. A floating Quelm named Bristnak bubbled with amusement. "They brought an army small enough to fit in a stadium? This will be over quickly. Perhaps they are scouts?" suggested a rock-like Sten called Vormak. "Surely more humans will arrive later." Taemin wasn't sure what to think. He sent down observation drones to get a closer look at the human landing zones. The drones showed him something unexpected. The humans weren't building defensive walls or digging trenches. Instead, they were checking weapons, loading supplies into small vehicles, and gathering in groups. One drone focused on a human female with short black hair tied back in a tight knot. She was pointing at a holographic map while other soldiers listened. Taemin activated the audio sensors. "The Vrath hive is 3 kilometers east," the woman said. Her voice was calm and measured. They'll detect us within the hour and send a probe force. Probably 500 drones to test our strength. And the Luminar? Asked a male soldier covered in scars. West side. They'll wait to see what the Vroth do first. Luminar always let others attack first. The woman smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. That's why we're going to hit them tonight while they're waiting. The scarred soldier laughed. I like it. Nothing. Like a surprise visit. Taemin couldn't believe what he was hearing. They were planning to attack? When outnumbered 50-1? He quickly checked his translation systems to make sure he was understanding correctly. Everything was working properly. The humans really were planning an offensive operation. He watched them for another hour. The humans moved with purpose and efficiency. They joked with each other between tasks. Their voices light and casual. Some were eating. Others were sleeping right there on the ground. They showed no signs of fear or worry. One drone captured a human male sitting on a supply crate, cleaning a large rifle. He was humming a tune while working. A younger human approached him nervously. Sergeant Dae-hyun, is it true you've fought in 12 campaigns? The older soldier, Dae-hyun, looked up. His face was weathered and tired. 14. Actually. You nervous, kid? A little. The young one admitted. Dae-hyun nodded. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember your training, and stay with your squad. We take care of our own. He went back to cleaning his rifle. Besides, they only outnumber us 10-1. That's practically fair odds. The young soldier laughed like Dae-hyun had told a joke. But Taemin realized the older human was serious. As evening approached on Terminus 7, Taemin attended the initial mission briefing through a holographic link. Captain Jiho appeared on the screen, standing in front of his command staff. He was a compact man with sharp eyes and close-cropped hair. He wore a simple uniform with minimal decoration. Status report? Jiho said calmly. The woman from earlier, identified as Lieutenant Hana, stepped forward. All units deployed and ready. Vroth are massing for an assault on our position. Estimate 3,000 drones incoming at dawn. Luminar are holding position but have increased energy signatures. They're preparing something big. Good, Jiho said. He looked at the tactical display showing all the enemy forces surrounding them. Red markers outnumbered blue markers overwhelmingly. They outnumber us 10-1. That makes it a fair fight. Several human officers chuckled. Taemin felt a chill run through his body. They weren't joking. They genuinely believed those odds were fair. What kind of species thought like that? Velthar appeared beside Taemin's station. The old Kalis said nothing, just watched the screens with his ancient eyes. Finally, he spoke softly. Now, you begin to understand. Humans do not calculate odds the way we do. They do not see numbers and determine if victory is possible. They decide they will win, and then they make it happen. He paused. Or they die trying. Usually both. Taemin began recording everything. His job was to document human combat behavior for the Galactic Council. They wanted to know if humans were as dangerous as the legends claimed. They wanted to know if humanity should be allowed to serve in military operations or if they should be banned from warfare entirely. As he watched the humans prepare for battle, laughing and joking despite being hopelessly outnumbered, Taemin realized something disturbing. The question wasn't whether humans were dangerous. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for what would happen when humans stopped holding back. The night grew darker. The humans finished their preparations and went quiet. Taemin's sensors showed them taking positions in the ruined buildings around their landing zone. They didn't huddle together for safety. They spread out, hiding in the shadows, weapons ready, waiting. And then, 3 hours before dawn, before the Vroth could launch their assault, the humans attacked first. The explosion lit up the night sky like a small sun. Taemin jerked back from his observation screen as 3 Vroth breeding chambers erupted in flames. The shockwaves could be seen from orbit, rippling through the industrial sector like waves on water. What happened? Bristnock bubbled in confusion. Did the Vrath weapons malfunction? No, Taman said slowly, adjusting his sensors. The humans did that. Impossible. Vormak rumbled. Our readings show the humans were still in their defensive positions. Taman rewound his recordings. He had been watching the human positions carefully, waiting for the Vrath dawn assault. But while he focused on the main human force, small teams had slipped away into the darkness. The recordings showed groups of 4 or 5 humans, moving through the ruins like shadows. They had traveled 3 kilometers through enemy territory, planted explosives in the most critical Vrath structures, and vanished again. Now the Vrath were panicking. Thousands of warrior drones poured out of their remaining hives, but they had no target to attack. The humans who set the explosives were already gone, melted back into the ruins. The main Vrath force, which had been preparing to assault the human positions at dawn, suddenly found their entire strategy destroyed. Tamin watched in amazement as the human response unfolded. Instead of celebrating their successful attack, Captain Jiho immediately issued new orders. The humans weren't retreating to their defensive positions. They were advancing into the confused Vrath formations. This is insane, Tamin whispered. They're attacking into an enemy force 50 times their size. But as he watched, he began to see the method behind the madness. The Vrath were strongest when defending their hives, fighting in coordinated swarms. But now they were scattered, confused, and angry. The humans had deliberately enraged them, and enraged Vrath made mistakes. Lieutenant Hana's voice crackled over the communication channels. 3rd Platoon, collapse structure 7 Alpha. We're herding them into kill zones. Tamin switched his view to structure 7 Alpha, a half-destroyed factory building. A group of Vrath warriors were pursuing a small human team through it. The humans ran through the building, seeming to flee in panic. The Vrath, sensing easy prey, charged after them. Then the building came down. Controlled explosives turned the factory into a tomb, crushing hundreds of Vrath under tons of rubble. The human team that had been fleeing emerged from a side entrance, completely unharmed. They're using the environment as a weapon, Velthar observed. Humans excel at turning any battlefield to their advantage. Over the next 4 hours, Taman documented something he had never seen in any war. The humans didn't just fight the Vrath, they manipulated them, guided them, and used the enemy's own instincts against them. When Vrath grouped together for strength, humans collapsed buildings on them. When Vrath spread out to search, humans ambushed them in small groups. When Vrath tried to retreat to their hives, humans blocked escape routes and forced them into prepared killing zones. One recording caught his attention. Sergeant Daehyun's squad was defending a narrow street against a Vrath assault. The insect warriors were pouring down the road like a living flood. Any normal force would have retreated from such overwhelming numbers. Instead, Daehyun shouted, "Music!" One soldier activated something, and suddenly loud sounds blasted through speakers. Taman's translator identified it as human music, something called rock. The noise was chaotic and harsh, with heavy rhythmic beats that made even his observation equipment vibrate. The Vrath assault faltered. The insects communicated through pheromones and subtle scent markers, a system that required concentration. The overwhelming noise disrupted their coordination completely. Warriors crashed into each other, unable to receive orders from their commanders. While the Vrath were confused, the humans attacked. They moved in pairs, covering each other, their weapons firing in controlled bursts. They weren't panicking or spraying bullets wildly. Every shot had purpose. Every movement was calculated. Reloading, one human would shout, and his partner would immediately step forward to cover him. They worked together like parts of a single organism, each one knowing exactly what the others would do. A Vrath warrior managed to close the distance, its blade-like limbs striking at a human soldier. The soldier ducked, rolled, and came up with a knife, driving it into the creature's weak joint. The Vrath fell, and the soldier was already moving to the next target. Taemin saw a female human, Corporal Yuna, according to his database, treating a wounded soldier while simultaneously firing her weapon one-handed at approaching Vrath. She worked with impossible calm, bandaging injuries with one hand and pulling the trigger with the other. How can they do that? Brisnock asked, watching the same feed. How can they fight and heal at the same time? Humans evolved as both predators and social creatures, Velthar said. They can track multiple threats while caring for their pack. It's what made them dominant on their world. The battle raged for 6 hours. When dawn finally came, Taemin expected to see the humans exhausted and retreating. Instead, they had pushed forward 2 full kilometers, leaving destroyed Vrath positions behind them. The industrial sector was littered with insect corpses, but what disturbed Taemin most wasn't the destruction. It was the human behavior after the fighting stopped. He watched Sergeant Daehyun's squad taking a rest break in a captured building. They were eating, drinking water, and checking their equipment. Some were joking and laughing about the battle they had just survived. One young soldier was visibly shaking, his hands trembling as he tried to reload his weapon. An older soldier sat beside him, speaking quietly. First, real fight? Hyun? Yeah, the young one, Hyun, said. I thought I was ready. Training doesn't prepare you for the smell, or the noise, or it never does, the older soldier said. You did good, kid. You kept fighting even when scared. That's all that matters. I just kept thinking about the family back home, Hyun admitted. Good. Hold on to that. It's what we're protecting. The older soldier clasped Hyun's shoulder. Welcome to the regiment. You're one of us now. Taemin watched this exchange with growing confusion. These humans had just killed hundreds of enemy warriors without hesitation, but they were also comforting each other, showing compassion, and thinking about their families. How could they be so violent and so gentle at the same time? His observations were interrupted by alarms. New contacts were approaching the human positions. Taemin's sensors identified them as Luminar Prism Guard, the crystal species' elite warriors. These were not regular soldiers. Each Prism Guard was a master fighter who had trained for decades. They were considered unbeatable in single combat. 5 Prism Guards were moving toward Daehyun's squad. The humans had only 8 soldiers in that position. Taemin immediately sent a warning to the human command. Lieutenant Hana's response was calm. Acknowledged. Sergeant Daehyun, you have incoming elite units. Understood, Daehyun replied. We'll handle it. Taemin wanted to scream at them. Didn't they understand? Prism Guards were legendary warriors. Each one could defeat dozens of normal soldiers. 5 of them against 8 humans should have been a massacre. He watched helplessly as the Prism Guards approached the human position. They moved with graceful confidence, their crystalline bodies reflecting the morning light. They expected the humans to either retreat or prepare for a defensive stand. The humans did neither. Split and flank, Daehyun ordered quietly. Alpha team left, Bravo team right. Wait for my signal. The 8 humans divided into 2 groups of 4. They didn't wait in the building to fight. They moved out through side exits, circling around the approaching Prism Guards. Taemin realized what they were doing. The Prism Guards expected to ambush the humans. Instead, the humans were ambushing them. The Prism Guards entered the building, weapons ready. They found it empty. For a moment, they stood in confusion, their crystalline features reflecting their surprise. Then the humans attacked from both sides simultaneously. Gunfire erupted from 2 directions. The Prism Guards were caught in a crossfire, their legendary combat skills useless because they couldn't reach their attackers. They tried to charge toward one group of humans, only to be shot from behind by the other group. They tried to find cover, but the humans had positioned themselves perfectly to eliminate all safe positions. The entire engagement lasted 47 seconds. When it ended, all 5 Prism Guards lay shattered on the ground. 3 humans were wounded from returned fire, but none were dead. They were already applying bandages to each other, their movements efficient and practiced. Enemy neutralized, Daehyun reported to command. His voice was casual, like he was reporting successful delivery of supplies. Prism guards attempted close-quarters combat. Poor tactical choice on their part. Taemin felt his blood run cold. Poor tactical choice. The humans had just defeated 5 of the galaxy's most feared warriors, and they discussed it like it was an obvious outcome, like there had never been any doubt. Bristnock was silent for the first time since the battle began. Vormak had stopped making his usual observations. Even Velthar looked troubled, his old eyes reflecting something that might have been memory or might have been fear. Taemin checked his recordings, making sure everything was documented properly. The Galactic Council needed to see this. They needed to understand what they had unleashed on Terminus 7. As he reviewed the footage, one thing became clear. The humans weren't winning through superior strength or advanced technology. They were winning through something more dangerous. They thought about violence differently than any other species. Where others saw impossible odds, humans saw opportunity. Where others saw defeat, humans saw challenges to overcome. And most terrifying of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. On the screen, he could see Captain Ji-ho reviewing reports from all units. The human commander looked tired, but satisfied. Good work, everyone. Get some rest. We push forward at noon. Forward. They were going to keep attacking. Taemin realized the humans had no intention of just holding their landing zone. They were planning to win this entire war. 12 planetary cycles had passed since the humans arrived. In that time, Taemin had barely slept. Every time he tried to rest, something impossible would happen on the battlefield below, and he would rush back to his observation station to record it. The war had changed completely. What started as a 3-way conflict had become something else. Now, the Vrath and Luminar were working together, something that should have been impossible given their hatred for each other. But they had a new enemy that frightened them more than they feared each other. They were coordinating their attacks against the humans, and they were still losing. Taemin's latest report to the Galactic Council was 20,000 words long and growing every day. He had documented things that shouldn't be possible. Humans fighting in toxic atmospheres that would kill most species in minutes. Humans continuing combat operations in temperatures that would freeze Kalis blood solid. Humans going 72 hours without sleep and still making tactical decisions. The Council has ordered the humans to withdraw, Velthar said, reading a message on his communication device. They say the contract is fulfilled. The humans have proven their worth. They should leave before casualties become too severe. Taemin pulled up the human casualty reports. In 12 planetary cycles of constant warfare, the humans had lost 43 soldiers. Another 112 were wounded, though many had already returned to duty. Against any other species, these numbers would be catastrophic. But the humans had killed over 15,000 Vrath and 3,000 Luminar warriors. The exchange rate was devastating for the enemy. What did Captain Ji-ho say? Taemin asked. Velthar showed him the response. It was short. Contract states we secure the planet. Planet not secure yet. Continuing operations. The humans were refusing to leave. Taemin wasn't sure if he should admire their dedication or fear their stubbornness. Maybe both. His observations had revealed something fundamental about human nature. They were persistent. Not in the way that Kalis were persistent through careful planning, or how Sten were persistent through patience. Humans were persistent like water wearing down stone. They simply never stopped. One recording showed Private Hyeon, the young soldier who had been shaking during his first battle. He was fighting in a sector where a chemical weapon had been released. The atmosphere was toxic, burning skin and lungs. Hyun's protective gear had been damaged, and the chemicals were affecting him. Taemin watched as the young human vomited from the exposure, blood vessels bursting in his eyes from the toxins. Then Hyun wiped his mouth, reloaded his weapon, and kept fighting. For 6 hours, When medics finally pulled him out, he was arguing that he could still fight. It took a direct order from Sergeant Dae Hyun to make him stand down. Even then, as the medics worked on him, Hyun was asking about his squad, making sure his teammates were safe. Why do they do this? Taemin asked Velthar. Why do they push themselves beyond what their bodies can endure? Because they evolved that way, Velthar replied. Humans hunted prey animals that were faster and stronger than them. They couldn't outrun their prey, so they followed it. For days, for weeks if necessary. They would track an animal until it collapsed from exhaustion, and only then would they make the kill. Taemin thought about that. Most predators were ambush hunters or pack hunters that relied on speed and strength. Humans were different. They were endurance hunters. They didn't need to be the fastest or strongest. They just needed to outlast everything else. Another recording showed what happened at a position called Outpost Stubborn. It was a small, defensive position that controlled a vital supply route. The Vroth had been attacking it constantly for 9 days. 9 days of continuous combat with no relief. The human defenders numbered 42 soldiers. They were surrounded by thousands of Vroth warriors. Supply drops were irregular because of anti-air fire. Food was running low. Ammunition was rationed carefully. Medical supplies were almost gone. Any rational species would have withdrawn. The position's tactical value wasn't worth 42 lives. But the humans weren't being rational. They were being stubborn. Taemin watched Corporal Min-jae, a combat medic, working in Outpost Stubborn's medical station. A Vroth assault had brought down part of the building, crushing Min-jae's arm under rubble. The limb was mangled beyond repair. Another soldier tried to pull Min-jae out to evacuate him. No time, Min-jae said through gritted teeth. Then he did something that made Taemin's stomach turn. Using his good hand and a medical laser, Min-jae amputated his own crushed arm. The recording captured every moment. The medic didn't scream. He just worked methodically, cauterizing the wound, applying chemicals to prevent infection, and wrapping the stump in bandages. When he finished, Min-jae stood up and went back to treating other wounded soldiers, one-handed. For 4 more hours, until reinforcements arrived. Taemin had to stop the recording and walk away. He found himself at the observation window, staring at Terminus 7. What kind of species could do that? What kind of creature could cut off its own limb and keep working? Humans have a saying, Velthar said, appearing beside him. They say pain is just a signal. It tells you something is wrong, but it doesn't have to stop you. That's insane. Taemin whispered. Yes, Velthar agreed, but it's also why they win. The war reached a critical point on the 13th cycle. The Vroth had gathered every available warrior for a final assault on Outpost Stubborn. They were going to throw everything at the position, break through, and cut the human supply lines. Intelligence reports showed 10,000 Vroth warriors massing for the attack, along with chemical weapons and biological horrors that Taemin couldn't properly classify. Every military analyst agreed the outpost was lost. The council offered to evacuate Taemin and the other observers. Most accepted. The station began shutting down non-essential systems as staff prepared to leave. Taemin stayed. He needed to see what would happen. He needed to document it. More than that, something inside him couldn't look away. These humans had fascinated and terrified him in equal measure. He had to know if they could survive what was coming. The Vroth assault began at dawn. Taemin's sensors could barely process the scale of it. 10,000 warriors moved like a living tide toward the outpost. Chemical weapons turned the air green and toxic. Biological weapons released swarms of parasites designed to eat through armor and flesh. The humans in Outpost Stubborn numbered 38 now. 4 had been killed in previous assaults. The remaining soldiers were exhausted, injured, and low on supplies. They should have been terrified. Instead, they were singing. Taemin could hear it through his audio sensors. Human voices raised in song. something about standing strong and never surrendering. They sang while checking their weapons. They sang while taking positions. They sang as the Vroth horde crashed into their defenses. The battle was chaos. Taemin tried to track everything, but his systems couldn't keep up. Explosions, gunfire, the screech of Vroth warriors, and the shouts of human soldiers. The outpost should have been overrun in minutes, but the humans wouldn't let it fall. Every breach in the defenses was met with immediate counterattack. Every wound was treated, while fighting continued. When ammunition ran low, humans used bayonets and knives. When those broke, they used their hands. Captain Jiho's voice cut through the chaos. All units, Outpost Stubborn is buckling. Prepare for relief assault. Sir, our forces are already engaged, Lieutenant Hana reported. We don't have reserves. Then we go ourselves, Jiho said calmly. Command staff, gear up. We're going in. Taemin watched in disbelief as Captain Jiho and his command staff, the officers who were supposed to be safely directing operations, grabbed weapons and headed toward the fighting. They were going to join the battle personally. But something else was happening. The humans at Outpost Stubborn weren't just defending anymore. During the heaviest part of the assault, when the Vroth thought they had the humans pinned down, the outpost's main gates opened. The humans charged out. 38 exhausted, wounded soldiers ran directly into 10,000 enemy warriors. It should have been suicide. It should have been a massacre. Instead, it was a precision strike. Lieutenant Hana had studied the Vrath command structure. She knew they relied on a hive mother who coordinated all the warriors. She knew exactly where that hive mother would position herself during the assault, thinking she was safe behind thousands of warriors. The humans cut through the Vroth lines like a knife. They didn't try to fight every enemy. They moved with purpose, pushing toward a single target. Every human knew their role. Every human trusted the others to do theirs. Sergeant Daehyun's squad led the charge, clearing a path with explosives and concentrated fire. Corporal Yuna followed behind, keeping wounded soldiers fighting with quick medical treatment. Private Hyun, still recovering from chemical exposure, carried extra ammunition for others. They reached the hive mother in 4 minutes. The creature was massive, protected by elite warriors. It didn't matter. The humans hit it with everything they had. Grenades, rockets, focused fire from every weapon. When the hive mother fell, the entire Vroth assault collapsed. Without coordination, the warriors became confused. They began retreating, abandoning their attack. The humans had won. Taemin sat at his station, reviewing the recordings over and over. The humans had been outnumbered. They had been exhausted. They had been low on supplies and surrounded by enemies. By every logical calculation, they should have been destroyed. But they refused to lose. Later, Taemin secured a communication link with Captain Jiho. He needed to understand. Captain, I must ask, how do your soldiers continue fighting in such conditions? How do they push beyond physical limitations? Jiho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired but steady. My species spent 300,000 years learning to survive. We weren't the biggest or fastest or strongest, but we outlasted everything else on our world. We survived ice ages and droughts. We survived predators and diseases. We learned that if you just refuse to give up, if you just keep moving forward, eventually, you win. He paused. We fought wars against each other for thousands of years. Terrible wars. Wars that killed millions. We learned to fight battles where surrender meant death, where you had to keep fighting or watch everything you love be destroyed. That mindset never left us. Taemin understood then. Humans didn't fight for glory or conquest. They fought the way prey animals fight when cornered, the way a parent fights to protect children, with everything they had, holding nothing back, because that's what survival demanded. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they were also the most desperate. They fought, like every battle might be their last, and that made them impossible to defeat. The Luminar Empire requested a ceasefire on the 14th planetary cycle. The Vrath followed, 2 days later. The war on Terminus 7 was over, and the humans had won. Taemin expected the aftermath to be brutal. He had studied enough military history to know what victorious armies often did to defeated enemies. Revenge, occupation, exploitation. He prepared his recording equipment to document whatever atrocities might follow. What he witnessed instead confused him more than anything he had seen during the fighting. The humans immediately established medical stations in former enemy territory, not just for their own wounded, but for everyone. Taemin watched Corporal Yuna, the same medic who had fought while treating wounded humans, now carefully treating injured Vrath warriors. The insect soldiers, who days ago had been trying to kill her, now accepted her help with visible confusion. "Why are you doing this?" One Vrath warrior clicked through translation devices. Yuna adjusted the bandage around the creature's damaged limb. "Because you're hurt and I'm a medic. That's reason enough. We were enemies." "We were," Yuna agreed. "War's over now. Time to heal." The Vrath warrior was silent for a long moment. Then it made a gesture that Taemin's database identified as respect or gratitude. "Humans are strange." "Yeah," Yuna said with a small smile. "We get that a lot." Similar scenes were playing out across the occupied territories. Human engineering units were repairing damaged infrastructure, not just military structures, but civilian buildings, water systems, and power generators. They were rebuilding the very cities they had fought through. Taemin observed Sergeant Daehyun's squad helping clear rubble from a collapsed residential building. They worked alongside local civilians, human soldiers, and alien residents together, pulling debris away to recover belongings and rebuild homes. A young Luminar child, crystalline and fragile, approached Daehyun nervously. The sergeant was intimidating, his face scarred and his body marked by countless battles. The child held out something small. "My toy," the child said in halting Galactic common language. "Stuck in rocks." Daehyun studied the rubble, then carefully began moving stones. The other soldiers helped, working with surprising gentleness. After 10 minutes, they recovered a small, crystal sculpture. Daehyun cleaned it carefully and handed it back to the child. "Here you go, little one. Safe now." The child's parent, a Luminar adult, approached cautiously. "You fought against us. You killed our soldiers." "Yes," Daehyun said simply. "That was war. This is peace. Different rules. I do not understand humans," the Luminar said. "That makes two of us," Daehyun replied. "Half the time, I don't understand us either." Taemin reviewed recording after recording, trying to reconcile what he was seeing. These were the same humans who had charged into impossible odds, who had fought with terrifying efficiency, who had killed thousands of enemy warriors. Now they were playing games with refugee children and sharing their food rations with former enemies. He found one recording particularly striking. A group of human soldiers was sitting in a cleared plaza, teaching a mixed group of young Vrath and Luminar a card game. The rules were complicated, but the human soldiers were patient, explaining each step carefully. Private Hyun, the young soldier who had fought through chemical weapons, was laughing as a Vrath child won a hand with surprising skill. "Natural card player," Hyun said. "You'd be dangerous back on Earth." The children were having fun. Just days ago, they had been hiding in shelters while war raged outside. Now they were playing games with the same soldiers who had ended that war. Taemin requested a formal interview with Lieutenant Hana. She agreed to meet him in one of the occupied administrative buildings. When he arrived, she was reviewing reconstruction plans with local leaders, both Vrath and Luminar representatives. They were discussing how to distribute resources fairly, how to rebuild damaged infrastructure, and how to prevent future conflicts. After the meeting ended, Hana sat down with Taemin. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, but her expression was calm. "Lieutenant, I need to understand something," Taemin began. "Your soldiers fought with incredible violence. I documented kills that were efficient and often brutal. But now, those same soldiers are helping the people they fought against. How do you reconcile these two behaviors? Hana thought for a moment. My species has a saying, you can't kill an idea with a bullet. We learned that the hard way. She leaned back in her chair. We fought wars on Earth for thousands of years. Eventually, we figured out that winning battles isn't enough. But how can your soldiers switch so easily between warrior and humanitarian? It's not easy, Hana said. It's training. It's discipline. It's understanding that violence is a tool, not a state of being. We fight when we have to, and we build when we can. She looked directly at Taemin. The same hands that pull a trigger can also pull a child from rubble. The same mind that plans an ambush can also plan a school. We're capable of both, and we choose which one to use based on the situation. Taemin made notes, but he still felt uncertain. Your soldiers killed thousands. Doesn't that affect them? Of course it does, Hana said quietly. Every soldier here will carry these memories forever. Some will have nightmares. Some will struggle with what they've done, but we also know that the fighting had to stop. And now, the healing has to begin. Both are our responsibility. Later, Taemin secured his most important interview, a one-on-one conversation with Captain Jiho. The captain agreed to meet in his temporary command post, a repurposed building with minimal decoration. Jiho sat across from Taemin, looking more tired than during the fighting. Captain, the Galactic Council has asked me to assess human military effectiveness and psychology. I need to understand why humans are so successful in warfare. Jiho nodded slowly. I'll try to explain. But first, you need to understand where humans come from. He pulled up a holographic display of Earth. Our world tried to kill us constantly. Ice ages, droughts, predators, diseases. We're not the strongest species that evolved on Earth. We're just the one that refused to die. The display showed various periods of human history. We evolved as both hunters and prey. That gave us awareness of threats from all directions. We learned to imagine scenarios, to plan ahead, to anticipate what enemies might do. That imagination makes us dangerous because we can think like our opponents. But that doesn't explain your combat effectiveness, Taemin said. Doesn't it? Jiho smiled slightly. We imagine what you'll do. And we prepare for it. When you do something we didn't expect, we adapt. Humans are exceptional at adaptation. We have to be. Our ancestors survived by adapting to changing environments. He continued. Then there's our social structure. Humans bond intensely with our groups. We call it unit cohesion, in military terms. But it's deeper than that. A human soldier will die for their squad because the squad becomes family. That's not training. That's instinct. Taemin thought about what he had observed. The way human soldiers worked together, anticipated each other's actions, protected each other without being ordered to do so. There's also human spite, Jiho said. We have a tendency to refuse defeat even when it's logical. If someone tells us something is impossible, we take it as a challenge. If someone says we can't win, we prove them wrong just to spite them. That seems inefficient, Taemin said carefully. Maybe. But it also means we never surrender when we should. We keep fighting when others would give up. That's a military advantage. Jiho's expression grew more serious. But here's what you really need to understand. Every human learns our history. We know about our wars. The world, wars. The genocides. The times we almost destroyed ourselves. We carry that knowledge like a weight. He looked directly at Taemin. We know what we're capable of. We know how effective we are at killing. That's why we try so hard to be better than that. That's why my soldiers are helping rebuild instead of looting. That's why we treat prisoners well and care for civilian populations. Because we remember what happens when we don't. So the violence is controlled? Taemin asked. Always, Jiho said firmly. We're not mindless killers. We're soldiers doing a job. When the job is fighting, we fight. When the job is peacekeeping, we keep peace. But make no mistake, if you force us to fight, we remember 10,000 years of human warfare. We remember every tactic, every strategy, every brutal lesson our ancestors learned. Taemin felt a chill. That's what makes you dangerous. Not strength or technology, but knowledge. Exactly, Jiho said. We've thought longer and harder about killing than any species in this galaxy. We've refined it, studied it, philosophized about it. We know violence intimately. And that knowledge never goes away. The conversation ended. But Taemin sat in the command post for a long time afterward, thinking. He finally understood. Humans weren't naturally violent. They were naturally survivors. Violence was just one of many tools they had mastered. They could be gentle or brutal, compassionate or ruthless, depending on what survival required. Over the following days, Taemin completed his report. He included everything: the combat effectiveness, the endurance, the tactical flexibility, and the post-conflict behavior. His conclusion was simple but profound. Humanity should not be feared for their capacity for violence. They should be feared for their capacity to control that violence and direct it precisely where needed. The Galactic Council responded quickly. They offered humanity a seat on the Security Council. They requested human military advisors. But more importantly, they wanted to make sure humans were allies, not enemies. Taemin watched as Captain Jiho received the news. The captain showed no triumph, no pride. Just tired. Acceptance. They're afraid of us, Jiho said. Yes, Taemin admitted. Good, Jiho replied. Fear breeds respect. Respect breeds caution. Caution prevents wars. He looked at Taemin. That's the best outcome we could hope for. As Taemin prepared to leave Terminus 7, Lieutenant Hana found him at the shuttle port. She handed him a small flag, the emblem of the Taeguk Regiment. You stayed when you could have run, she said. That took courage. That's the most human thing a non-human can do. Taemin took the flag carefully. Is that a compliment? Hana smiled. The highest one I can give. 6 months had passed since Terminus 7. Taemin stood before the full Galactic Council. His presentation materials arranged carefully on holographic displays. Around him sat representatives from 200 species, all waiting to hear his findings about human warfare. He was nervous. His report had the potential to change galactic policy forever. Some species wanted humans banned from all military operations. Others wanted to hire human mercenaries for their own conflicts. A few extremist factions wanted humanity quarantined to their home system. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with seats rising in tiers around the central presentation area. Taemin could feel thousands of eyes watching him. He took a breath and began. Honored council members, I have spent 3 months observing human military operations on Terminus 7. My findings are comprehensive and, I believe, essential for the Council's future security policies. He activated the first display, showing footage of the human landing. When humans arrived, they numbered 800 soldiers against combined enemy forces of over 50,000. Standard tactical analysis gave them zero chance of success. The footage shifted to show the battle's progression. Within 2 weeks, the humans had effectively won the war. They achieved this through methods that defy conventional military doctrine. A council member from the Vren cluster spoke up. Observer Taemin, we have read your preliminary reports. They describe humans as unusually violent and aggressive. Are they a threat to galactic peace? That is a complicated question, Taemin replied carefully. He showed recordings of human combat operations. Humans are capable of extreme violence. Yes, but they apply it with precision and purpose. They don't fight for enjoyment or glory. They fight to achieve specific objectives. He showed the footage of Outpost Stubborn. where 38 humans held against 10,000 Vroth. Human endurance exceeds any species I have studied. They can fight for days without rest. They continue functioning with injuries that would incapacitate most beings. They simply refuse to acknowledge defeat. This sounds like a species we should fear. Another council member said. Perhaps, Taemin agreed. But consider what happened after the fighting ended. He showed recordings of humans rebuilding, treating wounded enemies, and playing with refugee children. The council chamber grew quiet as they watched human soldiers showing compassion to former enemies. Humans possess a duality that is difficult for other species to understand. They can be ruthlessly efficient killers and gentle caregivers, often within the same day. This is not a contradiction to them. It is simply human nature. A Luminar representative stood, her crystalline body reflecting the chamber lights. I am Ambassador Shira. My world was one of the combatants on Terminus 7. I can confirm Observer Taemin's findings. The humans defeated our military forces, then helped rebuild our cities. They killed our soldiers, then treated our wounded. We do not understand them, but we respect them. Taemin nodded gratefully. The ambassador's experience reflects my observations. Humans don't seek endless war. They seek resolution. They fight to end conflicts, not perpetuate them. He showed tactical analysis data. Human military doctrine is based on several key principles. First, they assume they will always be outnumbered and outgunned. Every strategy is built around overcoming superior enemy forces. Second, they prioritize adaptability over rigid planning. Human units can change tactics instantly without waiting for command authorization. More data appeared. Third, humans train for what they call controlled chaos. They function better in confusing situations than in organized battles. Fourth, they have intense unit cohesion. Human soldiers will sacrifice themselves for their squad without hesitation. A Sten military commander rumbled a question. How do we defend against such tactics? That is the challenge, Taemin said. Human warfare is reactive and creative. They study their enemies and exploit weaknesses. They use unconventional methods. They turn environments into weapons. Traditional military strategies are often ineffective against human forces because humans don't follow traditional patterns. He showed the footage of Prism guards being defeated in 47 seconds. The Luminar Empire's elite warriors expected honorable combat. The humans expected to win. They created conditions that favored their weapons and tactics, then executed perfectly. This is how humans fight. They don't match enemy strengths. They create situations where enemy strengths don't matter. The council chamber filled with murmurs. Taemin waited for silence, then continued. But here is what the council must truly understand. Humans didn't become dangerous by accident. They evolved. That way. He showed images of Earth. The human homeworld is what they call a death world. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, deadly diseases. Humans evolved as both hunters and prey. They developed awareness of threats from all directions. They learned to imagine dangers that hadn't happened yet, allowing them to prepare for threats before encountering them. This imagination makes them dangerous, Taemin continued. A human soldier can simulate hundreds of battle scenarios mentally before fighting begins. They anticipate what enemies will do and prepare counters in advance. He showed more data. Humans also survived multiple near-extinction events on their world. Ice ages, volcanic winters, plagues. Each time, they adapted and survived. This created a species that refuses to accept extinction. They believe survival is always possible, no matter how bad circumstances become. A question came from the audience. You mentioned human history. How does that affect their military capability? Profoundly, Taemin said. He showed historical records. Humans fought wars against themselves for thousands of years. Not small conflicts, but total wars involving millions of soldiers. They developed industrial warfare, where entire societies mobilized for combat. They created weapons capable of destroying their own world. The chamber grew very quiet. Every human knows this history, Taemin said. They teach it to their children. The wars, the genocides, the nuclear weapons, the times they almost destroyed themselves. This knowledge shapes how they think about violence. He showed footage of Captain Jiho. I interviewed the human commander. He told me humans carry their violent history like a weight. They know what they're capable of. That's why they try so hard to control it. But when forced to fight, they remember everything their ancestors learned in 10,000 years of warfare. A council member asked the critical question. Observer Taemin, should we fear humanity? Taemin chose his words carefully. Fear is appropriate. Humans are the most effective warriors in the galaxy. But fear should not lead to hostility. Humans don't seek conquest. They seek security. If we treat them as allies, they become the most loyal friends we could have. If we treat them as enemies, we face a species that has spent 300,000 years learning to survive against impossible odds. He showed his final data. My recommendation is clear. Humanity should be integrated into galactic society, not isolated. They should be given responsibility, not restricted. They should be understood, not feared. A species this capable of violence is too dangerous to leave as an independent power. But as allies, they make everyone safer. The council debated for 3 hours. Taemin sat quietly, watching representatives argue about humanity's future. Finally, they voted. The results were mixed but decisive. Humanity would receive a seat on the Security Council. Human military advisors would be made available to member species. A human military academy would be established to share tactical knowledge. And most significantly, the Human Warfare Convention would be drafted, not to limit humans, but to establish protocols for other species engaging with human forces. After the session ended, Ambassador Shira approached Taemin. You spoke well, Observer. Your report may have saved my people from making a terrible mistake. Some wanted to seek revenge against humanity. Your documentation showed us that would end badly. I only reported what I observed, Taemin said. You did more than that, Shira replied. You helped us understand them. That is more valuable than any military intelligence. In the following months, Taemin accepted a position as the Galactic Council's liaison to human military forces. He became the galaxy's foremost expert on human warfare, not through study alone, but through direct observation and growing friendship with human soldiers. He visited Earth once, at Captain Jiho's invitation. The human homeworld was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Taemin saw vast oceans that could swallow ships, mountain ranges that touched the sky, and weather systems that could destroy cities. He understood why humans were so resilient. They had to be, to survive such a world. Jiho had retired from mercenary work and now taught at the new military academy. His students came from dozens of species, all learning human tactical doctrine. Taemin attended one of his lectures. You're here because your governments are afraid of humans, Jiho told the class bluntly. That's good. Fear means you'll take this seriously. Today, you learn why humans excel at warfare. Tomorrow, you learn why we desperately wish we didn't have to. The students looked confused. A young Kalis raised a hand. Sir, if humans are so good at war, why do you wish you weren't? Jiho was quiet for a moment. Because war costs us. Every battle leaves scars. Every victory has a price. We're good at war because we had to be, not because we wanted to be. If I could erase all human knowledge of warfare and ensure peace forever, I would do it instantly. Taemin understood then. Humans weren't proud of their military capability. They were burdened by it. They carried the weight of being the galaxy's best warriors, knowing what that meant about their history and nature. Lieutenant Hana, now Colonel Hana, led integration programs between human and alien forces. She discovered that human tactics revolutionized how other species approached warfare, not through brutality, but through efficiency. Human methods saved lives by ending conflicts quickly. Sergeant Dae-hyun retired to Earth and opened a small restaurant. Tae-min visited once. The place was quiet and peaceful, filled with pictures of Dae-hyun's squad. When young soldiers asked about his service, Dae-hyun told them, "We did what we had to do. Now, you do better than we did." 5 years after Terminus 7, a new crisis emerged on the frontier. An aggressive species called the Korthan were expanding violently, threatening multiple settled worlds. The Galactic Council authorized military response. This time, the response force was different. Humans led mixed species units, combining human tactical flexibility with other species' strengths. Kali's observation and analysis. Sten endurance. Luminar energy weapons. Vrath, numerical superiority. All coordinated, using human command structures. Tae-min observed from a command ship, watching the operation unfold. The coalition force fought with human efficiency, but without human recklessness. They had learned to balance aggression with caution, violence with compassion. A young Luminar officer approached General Hana during the operation. "General, how do humans maintain hope during extended combat?" Hana's response was simple. "We remember what we're fighting for, and we never fight alone." The coalition defeated the Korthan in 6 weeks with minimal casualties. The victory wasn't just military. It was proof that human methods could be taught, that human effectiveness could be shared. Tae-min completed his final observation report sitting in his quarters aboard the command ship. He titled it, 5 Years After First Contact, The Integration of Human Warfare Doctrine. His conclusion was simple. "I observed humans enter the battlefield and finally understood why everyone fears them. They are hunters who never stop pursuing. They are survivors who never accept defeat. They are warriors who have studied violence for 10,000 years. But I also learned why. When humanity stands beside you, you fear nothing else. They bring loyalty that transcends species. They bring tactical knowledge that saves lives. They bring determination that inspires courage. The greatest warriors in the galaxy didn't conquer us. They joined us. And that changes everything." He sent the report to the Galactic Council and leaned back, watching stars stream past the window. Somewhere on Terminus 7, human soldiers were probably still helping rebuild the world they once fought for. Somewhere on Earth, veterans were teaching the next generation to be better than they were. Somewhere in the galaxy, human and alien soldiers were standing together against threats. Tae-min had started as an observer, tasked with documenting a dangerous species. He had become something else. A bridge between humans and the galaxy, helping both sides understand each other. His communication device chimed. A message from Velthar, his old mentor. It contained a single line from an ancient human philosopher. "Those who have gazed upon war never speak of glory." Tae-min finally understood completely. Humans feared themselves more than any alien species ever could. They knew their own capacity for violence. They carried guilt for their history. They tried desperately to be better than their nature demanded. That self-awareness, that constant struggle to be better, was what made them truly remarkable. Not their weapons, not their tactics, not their endurance, their humanity.